Hey everybody, welcome back to RunNGun. I'm JT, and in this video we are reviewing the TTArtisan 40mm f2.8 macro lens. Now I've been meaning to review this for a long time now. I've had this lens for probably over a year, been trying to make this review video. I got very sick for a very long time, you know, that whole sickness thing that was going around the whole world. I moved across the country and I'm finally kind of settled here in Nashville, and I'm able to finally get this lens review out. So thank you to TTArtisan for sending me this lens to take a look at. I've had a lot of fun with it, but as always, you guys are always gonna get my unbiased opinion on my products that I review. So let's hop right into this lens review. So as many of you guys know, I shoot on the Nikon Z6. So thankfully, TTArtisan makes this in the Z mount. So I have this for the Z mount for the Nikon Z6. So I've been having a blast with this lens. There's a lot of pros and a couple cons to it that we'll talk about here in just a second, but this is fun. Whether you're doing photo or video, a macro lens is very handy to have. And did I mention how inexpensive this lens is? 99 bucks, 99 US dollars. So this comes in at under 100 US dollars, which is fantastic. So for under 100 bucks, is it any good? Let's find out. So let's run over some specs real quick. This is an f2.8 lens. It goes from f2.8 to f16. Sometimes you have to stop down quite a bit to get a little bit more in focus, especially with macro, but having that f2.8 is really awesome to let the most amount of light in. A lot of inexpensive macro lenses only open to f4 or f5.6, so that ability to get a couple more stops of light is quite impressive. So one of the other great things about this lens is it comes in quite a few different mount options, and I'm gonna have to read them off a list so I don't forget any. We have the Canon EF, Canon RF, the Fuji X, Leica L, Micro Four Thirds, Sony E mount, and of course what I have here, the Nikon Z mount. So you have a lot of options if you want to give this lens a try. So getting into some of the pros of this lens, we've already talked about it's an f2.8 lens. You can really open up that aperture. You can get that super smooth bokeh. That's another pro of this lens. The bokeh is just super smooth. And the parts of your image that are in focus, even though it's a very razor thin plane of focus, especially with macro lenses, if you guys aren't familiar, but it is tack sharp. I was super surprised for the price of this lens, under 100 bucks, how freaking sharp that this is. And the spots that are in focus are sharp. So looking a little bit at this lens, we have a nice, smooth manual focus ring. Manual focus is pretty important when you're doing macro. When you start getting into autofocus lenses, they start twitching around. It's very hard to focus with. So with macro, you have that nice 180-degree focus throw, so you can really get in there with some precision and focus exactly where you want to be, and then make some minor adjustments with your camera, just a little bit. So the manual focus is a huge help on this lens. Macro isn't, again, something that I really use autofocus for in the first place. Next thing we're going to get to is this aperture ring. Now it does have some solid clicks. You can probably hear it here. So we do have solid clicks, which are at f2.8, between f2.8 and 4, f5.6, f8, f11, but you can also go in between. So if I wanted to be, let's say f3, I can kind of go here between 2.8 and 4 and just kind of dial in to like 3, 3.5 before I click to 4. So I think it's really neat that I have a nice smooth manual aperture ring, and I can also kind of go between if I want to, but I do have those hard clicks in there that I can utilize. And one of the huge things that I love about this, look at this metal lens cap that screws on here. Nice aluminum, and you can see this kind of extends to about twice the length of the lens when you focus very close. But the other thing I want to talk about is the build quality of this lens. This is solid metal, solid aluminum. I think one of these rings may be plastic on here. I'm not 100% sure if that that ring is plastic on there, but this is a very solid lens. There's some heft to it. It's a little bit heavy, but I know that build quality is there. If I bump it up against something, it's not gonna fall apart like some Sigma lenses that I've set in my bag and the whole lens just falls apart. So solid build quality. Again, all of these things for under $100. So overall, I think the TTArtisan is a fantastic macro lens, whether you're a beginner or you've been doing this for a while. Honestly, I don't do macro all that often, but this is just something creative that I can throw in my bag. It's a fun lens to play with. It's fun to put on my camera. And when you have a piece of gear that's a lot of fun to use, you tend to shoot more. So I know photography isn't always about gear, but sometimes it is. Sometimes you can pick up an inexpensive piece of glass, an inexpensive camera, anything that makes you get out or inspires you to get out, create, photograph more. That's all good in my book. So for under $100, I'll have links down below in the description, Amazon affiliate links, so you guys can give me like a penny or two at no cost to you, and it helps keep this channel running. So thank you guys for that. But if you're a beginner, you just want to try out macro a little bit, or you just want to challenge yourself to get creative, absolutely recommend the TTArtisan. Now we talked about a lot of pros of this lens. Are there any cons? Well, maybe you think the weight is a little bit heavy. Personally, it doesn't bother me. Maybe the extremely shallow depth of field bothers you a little bit, because even at f/16, your depth of field is still pretty razor thin and you'll have to do some focus stacking. That's really a con, more so of macro than this lens itself, but pretty edge to edge sharp. I'm very curious to test this on portraits. I think it would be fun to see what the bokeh and what the focus and all of the dynamics and the character of this lens look like when it comes to portraits. But for macro work, fantastic lens, and I highly recommend it. So if you're interested in trying out macro, give it a try. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Let me know what other reviews you guys would like to see. I'm really looking forward to doing more camera and lens reviews and general photography gear reviews in 2023. So look forward to seeing more of those. And until next time, get out and go shoot.